G'day everyone, it's Michelle J. Raymond, and we are back again, listeners, talking about my favorite topic, which is all things LinkedIn company pages. And listeners, I've got a very special guest who has been part of a project that has grown a LinkedIn company page to 500,000 followers since 2023. Holly Kerr, I can't wait to have this conversation with you. Thanks for coming and sharing the secret to your success.
Oh no, thank you so much for having me. I'm always excited to talk about LinkedIn, and especially when it's about company pages, which I think at the moment are getting a bit of bad press and people are saying they're not very effective, and I disagree.
Look, and that is exactly why I have you on here. And I heard you on another podcast and I was listening going, yes, it can be successful. Like, there isn't all bad news, listeners. There are shining examples out there, which I'm going to have more of people like you, Holly, onto the podcast so that we can actually show people what's possible. And just because everyone bags out LinkedIn company pages and says they're a waste of time, yeah, that's great if that's still your corporate job and you're responsible for it. But Holly, like, for people who haven't come across you, can you just tell us, like, what is your role at AtkinsRéalis and what is it that actually you do and what are your responsibilities? Because something tells me that you're not just sitting there just doing LinkedIn.
No, and sure, I can kind of give a bit of insight. So I've worked for AtkinsRéalis for coming on 9 years in July. I've been in a social media focused role for 2 years, and that is kind of when I stepped into focusing only on social media. So I have a marketing background before that. And for anyone who doesn't know, AtkinsRéalis is an engineering and nuclear services company. So it's in the B2B space. We don't have a product that we're selling. We have our people, their expertise, and the solutions that we're trying to bring to clients and kind of communities in these projects that we deliver. So what does that mean for social media? My responsibilities kind of cover all of the channels that we're on, and that is the ones you would probably expect. We're kind of there. So LinkedIn is our primary. We find that most of our audience are there, and it's a key focus for us. But outside the kind of day-to-day posting on the company page, that strategy has evolved, especially over the last kind of 5 years as LinkedIn has grown and kind of morphed into what it is now. So we look at the paid approach. We also look at leader-led social media. So what are the execs and kind of leaders in the business out there posting, if anything? And then our people, we have a 40,000 strong employee workforce, and we've, I think, all heard now the impact employee advocacy can have. So our LinkedIn strategy is kind of got those 4 prongs, and we try and move away from, sometimes the business comes to us and says, can we get this on LinkedIn? And I think we were in a place before where the knee jerk was like, yes, we'll do a company page post. Let's get that sorted. We try and take a step back and we try and offer insights into what might be the best lever to pull. And sometimes it's one of them, sometimes it's all of them, and sometimes it's going to be a mixture. But so outside of kind of that day-to-day, we look after the governance, the strategy, and then the training of all of our people, and kind of at various different levels as well.
So you're sitting around twiddling your thumbs is what I hear. Yes. So much free time on your hands. Like, that is the thing that I think. I just got back from social media marketing world, got to speak to lots of great marketers there. And I shared it on last week's episode. But the thing that blew me away is just how many things marketing teams, social media teams are juggling in day-to-day life in corporate. It is just mind-blowing. I'm lucky. I just get to be an expert on LinkedIn and specifically, pages and employee advocacy. I don't even touch paid. So, for me, it's quite a challenge to keep up with all the changes. So I can only imagine, even with all of your experience, trying to convey the latest, greatest tips of what's going on, align it still with your strategy, achieve the business goals. And I'm imagining that there's a lot of people that have a lot of opinions on what you guys are doing and what you should be doing. And we will talk about that later, because I think that's probably the biggest challenge that internal teams have, is trying to fend off all of the requests that come through. But I did tease the audience, and it is actually true that you guys crossed over 500,000 followers, most of which have grown since 2023. I know that number's even higher now since we booked to have this conversation. But Why do you think, in a world where organic company page reach is next to nothing, why do you think the page grew so much? Because there are people out there that have access to all of those things that you have, employee advocacy or paid strategies or all the things that you said. What do you think has been the secret to your success?
Sure. I had to think about this, and I wanted to kind of make sure my answer wasn't kind of wishy-washy. So I've really tried to sit and stew on it. So I think the first thing I have to acknowledge is it's an established brand within its category, and that is a big boost, right? That's a big help. We rebranded in 2023 in September, so we had to start a new page, and there was obviously legacy understanding of this brand and where it was moving, and excitement after the initial rebrand. So I think that got us started. Outside of that, I think acknowledging that this was a huge team effort. This was not going to happen with the 3 people that work in my team, so including me. So there's 3 of us who work on the 13 channels that we run globally, and we were never going to have the ability to reach kind of ambitious goals just working on our own. And I think we had to kind of take a step back and look at what was our goal. And it was initially growth, and it was brand awareness. So we broadened the net in terms of who can help us, what ideas can we throw into the mix. And that took us into a space where we were testing and we were failing fast. I know people say that a lot, and sometimes it's really hard to get into a space where you feel you can do that on a stage that is so visible, like a social media account, because people can see it. But we tried different things, whether that was formats, whether it was recurring items, whether we ran for a while a meet our experts, where we would share employee profiles and see, how do people relate to this and how they're responding. We tested different types of video, and all the while kind of contesting with the algorithmic changes that kind of appear and kind of throw chaos into your plans. I think as well, we've spoken about this before, but we reduced down the number of posts. So when I first came into this role, we were posting upwards of 6 times a day in a 24-hour period. That's just a lot. And if you're acknowledging company page posts are already competing with the rest of the feed and boosted posts and ads, why compete with yourself was kind of what we were trying to put forward to our stakeholders. So we now post twice within a 24-hour period. And I think bringing a bit of balance and control has helped. It's helped us redirect some of the content to come out via individual accounts or leader accounts as well. But we really said, what do we want people to follow us for? Like, why would they follow this page? And we really defined that. So we break news, we share stories of what the brand is doing, but we try and really put the lens over of like, why does this matter to anyone kind of just scrolling? How does this impact the communities that we're serving? Put that at the core of the post and the story. So we're not talking about all the time, AtkinsRéalis is doing this. A lot of the time, we're trying to either educate or inform or kind of energize people behind the industry that we're working in, or the impact that projects can have. That often I find out something new every week that we do, and other people won't know either. So we really tried to consider why someone would want to follow us, and then try and keep that in mind among all of the other things we have to consider in a plan for our company page.
I know, listeners, that Holly has just shared so many cool things, and I could talk about this all day. And I appreciate your honesty in thinking about this answer, because yes, there have been some advantages that you have from the size of the brand that you have and the resources and the legacy of that brand. But I think that the actual winning piece of what you've just shared there is creating something worth following for your industry. And if I could have that on T-shirts and sell it to everybody and say, do what Holly says, like create a page worth following, I'm going to say that, algorithm aside and all the other crazy that comes into the platform, I actually think that is the most simple way to define the success that would come with a company page. And I 100% agree with you, is why we actually putting all of this effort into pages? Is it just to talk about ourselves? And I did a podcast episode recently where I was talking about a lot of pages turn into the internal newsletter or bulletin board, where we talk about what's coming up, what we're going to do. Here's what we've been doing, we, and nothing about the industry. So I have a very happy heart listening to what you're sharing here. And no doubt that that's been, part of the big success. But I think it's also interesting that, as you said, there's lots of pieces to this puzzle. And some of it is acknowledging that when you try stuff, you're not necessarily going to break a whole brand because a post fails. Can we just talk about that one more time? Because I think being scared that you're going to break a brand stops people from trying things to see what works. Is that something you had to go through in the beginning and come to terms with what that actually was?
Yes, and I think we could all relate. We hear it all the time, the thing I put the most love and energy into and think this is going to be the post. We'll talk about this for years to come, and this will be the defining moment of my social media career, is the post that gets vanity metrics are terrible, the impressions are not what I wanted, and it just passes by without anyone caring. And the thing that you whip up quickly and get out there in a rush with none of your governance and none of your strategy, it does really well. And I think there's a lesson in that, which is sometimes we can overcomplicate what we're doing. And at the core, if we come back to that piece that you just pulled out, which is this something that I care about if I'm scrolling past tens of posts a day? And if the answer is yes, then you're onto a good thing. I think we have had lots of failures in terms of things we've tried and it hasn't worked. One of the biggest obstacles we'd had when we first rebranded was this new brand we have is way more vibrant than we were kind of blue and grey before. And we've got 4 key colours and they're bold, and we have this brilliance as kind of the effect of the way the brand is applied. And it's a learning curve to learn how to apply it in a way that isn't garish and isn't standing out and looking clunky. And I still don't get that right all the time, but you have to try things and you have to kind of see how it looks and it goes over. I think, though, that is part of the joy I find in this role. It's the thing that brings me the most annoyance and the most happiness. It's that kind of duality of it, where I'm happy with something works really well, and I also then feel really gutted when it doesn't. But that's what keeps it interesting. That's what keeps me coming back.
Oh, welcome to my world. I spent the last 3 months of last year rocking in a corner going, do I even want to do this LinkedIn stuff anymore? Where have all my impressions gone? On the other hand, posting, everyone, it's all about relative and it's not about impressions. It's not about reach. And so on one hand, I knew what it was, but my inside, the honest truth, listeners, is that I was shattered and I did not know how to respond to something that had worked consistently in my personal content for 10 years. I knew if I did this would be the outcome every single time, day after day for that. And then as time goes on, and then LinkedIn wake up one day and they say, okay, it's about relevancy and not reach now. We're changing the whole game. And it felt awful, and I'm not going to sugarcoat that. I actually think pages have been shielded from this impact on such a level because realistically, most pages were never in the feed for the last 6 years that I've been focused on company pages. We were never showing in the home feed. So I don't think any page admins really noticed the bump from this side of things. And it will be interesting to see where it goes. I literally spent an hour on a call today with a friend of mine who's part of the engineering team for the pages team. And there's some fundamental shifts that I'm excited about where they're going. And I'd love to tell you, but I can't. Otherwise, I'll get cut off. But what I love is that they're open to where the next evolution of pages is. And that's something that excites me because it means they're putting money into it. And that means that they still value pages like we all should. Now, when you did your celebration post for this big achievement, and I was so glad that you did stop for a minute and actually acknowledge the work that had gone into this massive achievement, because I just want to say, I know how hard it is to grow a page, regardless of all of those things that you had behind you. You have to show up and do the work and be in service of your audience. But there was one line that stood out from that post and it caught my attention, which is employee advocacy isn't a tactic for us. it's a behavior. What does that actually mean and look like inside your business?
Sure. I think we've been working with our talent attraction team, and I want to shout them out because they do an incredible amount of this work with us, and we wouldn't be able to do this without them. And they were the pioneers of this. Before I came into this role, they were kind of working almost underground delivering this, and they didn't maybe have the inroads that I did in some of the places I now do. So we kind of work together to do this as best we can. But what it really means for us is we've all heard, I think, the impact that employees talking about their experience at a brand, good, bad, ugly, can have. And obviously I want people to talk about the reality, but I'd like that to be, authentic as much as we can say, like, authentic in social world. And what we have recognized is it's a cultural behavioral change that we're asking. We want people to feel proud. And if they do, we'd like them to maybe, externalize that and share their experience. But that doesn't just happen. There's a few things that you need to do to enable it. So for us, it looks at role modeling that behavior. So you need role models from all walks of life and every kind of role in the business, whether that is the leaders, but most people now recognize that leaders have a team around them helping them do that. So they're not necessarily the people I want to put up on a pedestal. Within our business, we've always had people that have energetically done this themselves, and I champion those people, and we really try and make them as visible as we can and celebrate them. I also started role modeling the behavior myself so that I had a bit of a case study. And my goal is that by the end of this year, I'm no longer the case study. I don't want to be the case study. I want it to be people from the business. So that role modeling piece is really important though, because if you see someone in your team doing it and getting recognition, the likelihood is other people catch on and they recognize it could be good for them to do as well. But beyond that, you need to make it easy for people to do. So what tools and training are you able to provide? And we've worked really hard over the last year to create on our intranet a social media hub that's got all of the governance and code of conduct and all of the things I need to have on there. But it goes well beyond that now into, if you're just getting started, here's the deck for you. If you think kind of what to do, but you want to take it to the next level, here's how you can upskill. Okay, you're really good and you're consistent. What else are you missing? Here's all of the latest tips and tricks. And that it's hard work to keep that up to date and to make sure it's accessible and kind of not overwhelming. So we've got lots of kind of ways that people can access, the advice and the training. Myself and my team, in a targeted way, because we couldn't possibly train 40,000 people if we wanted to, we'll get out there and we'll run sessions in person, we'll do webinars, we'll make sure that we're available to kind of ease people into this world. But I think the fundamental piece is I want our people to know that we trust them to do this and we trust them to do it well. And that doesn't mean that everyone is going to become a brand parrot. And actually, that's my hardest thing with all of this, is that people want branded assets and they want, the line to take, and they want to just, take what we give them. And getting them unwedded from that is a challenge. And that's what I'm determined to kind of encourage our people to do, is to feel they can post as themselves with their opinions, and that's what we want. That's what's real. That's what's going to cut through. So it is a big undertaking, and it shouldn't be underestimated, the effort that gets into behind these programs. But the payoff is huge, not only for the individuals and building their own personal brands, but the ripple effect for the company and the reputation and amplifying messages is enormous.
I am laughing because, Holly, isn't it just as simple as all of the gurus and the bros and the hackers out there on LinkedIn that say, just get your employees active, you'll get, 10 times more reach, blah, blah, blah. Didn't you just flick a switch? Wasn't it that simple that everybody was lining up saying, Holly, let me do whatever it is that you need. I can't wait. Again, thank you for your honesty that these things aren't easy, but they are worth it if we invest time and resources into it. And I think, like you said, sometimes starting off small and then working our way up bit by bit over time. So this has taken you a few years to implement. And I think the lesson is to be realistic, with these implementation timeframes. It won't happen overnight, but it will happen, as the ads say here in Australia.
Yeah.
There was something that we alluded to earlier, and you and I were talking about the joys of working in big corporations. They come with their own unique sets of challenges. And one of yours was obviously everybody has something that they want to post. You've got one main key page, across, 40,000 employees, all the different business units, all the cool stuff that your business is up to on a daily basis. How do you decide what content deserves a place on the page versus what probably shouldn't be posted? I mean, going from 6 back to 2 a day, you had to probably make some pretty tough and strong decisions. I'm thinking, how did the business receive that, and where are you at now?
Yeah, so I would say this is the hardest bit of the job, genuinely. And that doesn't mean it's not worthwhile and interesting. It just means it's really challenging. And when I did kind of come in and say we shouldn't be posting 6 times in a 24-hour period, at first we capped it to 3, and that was, kind of groundbreaking, and it made me unpopular for a while, but I was comfortable to be unpopular because I believed in where we were going, and my job was to guide people through that and keep them on track with the plan. I think the best way I could probably talk about this is with a real life example and something we're working through now. So we attend a lot of events as a company. So if I posted every single event that AtkinsRéalis may show up at, whether it's with a delegate or whether a full stand sponsorship, I would be posting numerous times a day, and nobody would ever want to follow the page because it's just an event promotion page. And so when I first came into this role and when we were first kind of grappling with this, we said, we're not posting these events. And we went, we're not going to do it. So we kind of wound it down and we said, no more. We'll have our individuals post. They'll say, we're going to this event. They'll talk about it. And if we want to talk about an event we're going to, let's talk about something we're going to speak about at the event. And we'll use that. And at the end of the post, we can say, we're going to this event, see you there. That was working for a while. But actually, in this example, we then heard feedback from different parts of the company, places where brand awareness maybe wasn't as strong, or where 4 or 5 of these events they attend in a year are key moments in time for them. And what that's led us to now is almost a hybrid of where we'd been, where we have a rough framework that has a tiered system. And I work with our directors of marketing in the kind of 2 key parts of our business to understand in which region, which events are really mega for us, and where we have put a sizable amount of investment, whether it's monetary or whether it's people's time and what the goals are and what we're hoping to achieve connected to the business's plans. And that helps us know whether we're going to announce our attendance on the company page, whether we're going to do a kind of event activation and involve social in that plan, or whether it's kind of a bit less prominent, but we'll still support individual delegates and kind of get them posting ahead of that event, or whether it's not something we need to worry about at all. And what I would say with these frameworks is be brave, put one together, be prepared for the first iteration of that you put forward. It's going to need lots of suggestions, and have the humility to have people feed into it. I find this really hard. I like to work on something and finish it that day and move on to the next thing. So I find this really challenging. Exactly. I want to tick it off. But actually, this event framework, we'll probably finalize it in the next 2 months. And we've been working on this in some type of way for probably over a year. And you have to be okay with that. Things evolve and change. And also in 2 months' time, I'll go final. And then we'll have to consider something else, and we'll make it, we'll change it again. So put these frameworks in place, but know that it has to be responsive in real time. So it's not realistic to post everything. It's not realistic to have someone chuck something at you and get it up that same day until it's newsworthy, and it's a really difficult, we don't have a map for it, but try to put a framework in place and back your strategy and really explain to people why we wouldn't want to be sharing absolutely everything, and redirect them to what we can do instead. I think that's a vital lesson I've had from this is, so it's not going to go here, but it could go there, and explain how that could work as well.
I love it. I literally stood on stage at Social Media Marketing World and pretty much begged the audience to stop filling up our feeds with "we're at this event" posts. No one cares. Like, honestly, no one cares. Give them a reason to come and see your team there. Let them see the faces of the people that are there. So listeners that are catching this on the podcast, I'm sitting here high-fiving Holly going, this is like the best. I want everybody to follow that. But I'm also a realist. I know that you can't just throw things out because that's what works on social or that's what works on LinkedIn. You are part of a greater team. You have colleagues that you need to work with ongoing and not just, bad luck, it's my way or the highway. So I love hearing about the practical side of this, that it isn't just black and white. It isn't just a one-way, one size fits everyone, because that is not the reality, listeners. If you are having trouble trying to negotiate and align your social media strategy with business goals, and it feels like people are always trying to send you off course, that is a day in the life of a page admin or a social media manager or a marketing manager. And the reason, as I said, that I love having you to have this conversation, Holly, is the fact that's the reality, not this glorified vision of people on YouTube that do videos that say, just post this and it'll all be magic and we're all going to make billions of dollars. Like, it doesn't work like that in a business setting with, company pages especially. But looking back on the journey, and you've shared so much to get to 500,000 plus followers now, what's the biggest lesson that you've learned, either personally or professionally, about growing the company page today that you wish you'd known a few years ago?
It's a really good question. And I think for me, I come from a background where I did a drama degree at university, and the way that manifests in my day-to-day is I have a flair for dramatics. But outside of that, I love connecting with people, and I'm at the core of that kind of dramaturgy is that communication. So what are you conveying to an audience and how do you want to make them feel? And I think if we can bring more of that into our why, and when we're devising a strategy or whether we're focusing on an individual post, of course we have back-to-back calls and there's lots to distract us from our why or the page's why. But I think if I could go back to myself, then I'd say, know what we want people to feel when they're interacting with our content and let that guide us. And whether that's our people, we want them to feel proud and we want them to feel a sense of ownership behind the brand as well. And if it's people that we're reaching out to, we want to inspire the next generation of people to join our industry. And if it's our clients and our communities, we want them to feel, excited by what's happening in their community and by the problems that we're solving. So really lead with feeling, and that kind of sets, it's a really good barometer for where you should be going and how you should be showing up.
I love it. What, actually care about your audience? Is this the secret to actually give a damn about the people on the other side? Who would have thought, Holly? Who would have thought that's the secret, is that it's not all about you, it's about them. And I'm going to throw one very quick last question in there. If I was the LinkedIn gods of company pages, which I'm just the company page queen, so I'm not quite there yet. But if I was the gods that could grant you one company page wish for one feature, what would you choose?
Oh, a good question.
You just never know who's listening to this podcast. And I know that we do have a LinkedIn team that do listen in, especially on the pages episodes. So I didn't want to miss this one because it's top of mind after my conversation today. But what would you pick? And don't ask for organic impressions because I'm not that good. It's never going to happen.
You know what? So we've got a newsletter that we're running, and for us, that newsletter is doing really well. But I wish I could see more detailed analytics of my newsletter. I have some and it's great, but to really get all of the data that I want, I have to be really disciplined about every week going in and like pulling data and then adding it to a different spreadsheet and analyzing it. And I wish that they would level up that, because we're about to launch a second newsletter because we've seen it be so successful. But the thing that's holding me back from being able to, grow it even more is I can't always tell the story and tell the success because the data's not always there.
Great minds think alike. It was on my shopping list today because I love newsletters. I think every company page of a reasonable size should have one. And that for me was it as well. It's all about being able to almost justify what you're trying to do out there. For me, previously, it was about commenting as your page and being able to analyze the impressions, and that stuff's coming as far as I know. So there's some cool things coming, but yeah, I'm right there. So thank you for answering that one off the cuff. Like I said, I know that there are LinkedIn employees that listen to this podcast, and my next guest is from the B2B Institute. Vita Molis is on next week. So I can't wait to talk to her and see what's coming out of the Institute. But Holly, thank you so much for your honesty. Thank you for sharing the realities of what it's like to grow a page to 500,000 followers plus. I am absolutely cheering you on and all of the success because I know that the amount of effort that's gone in by you, your team, your colleagues to make this happen. I wish you every success in the future, and thanks for coming on and sharing.
Oh, amazing. No, thank you so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
It has. And anytime you want to talk company pages, you know where to find me. But until next week, listeners, cheers.